Tonight, the crisis between the United States and Iran is not just a distant conflict unfolding on the other side of the world. It's a story that impacts us all, no matter where we live or what we do. Whether you're filling up your car, running a business, or simply trying to make sense of the headlines, the ripple effects of this crisis are already reaching into our daily lives. At the heart of the crisis is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but vital waterway through which nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes every single day. Now, with Iran blocking this crucial passage, the flow of oil has come to a standstill, sending shockwaves through global markets and threatening to drive up the price of gasoline, heating, and even everyday goods. When oil stops moving, it's not just numbers on a stock ticker that change. Families feel the pinch at the pump, factories slow down or shut their doors, and small businesses face tough choices. The economic shockwaves don't stop at national borders, they ripple out, affecting jobs, savings, and the cost of living for millions around the globe. But this standoff is about more than just economics. It's a test of international law, diplomacy, and the very rules that have kept the world from sliding into chaos. Military leaders are on high alert, diplomats are scrambling to find solutions, and ordinary people everywhere are raising their voices for peace, worried about what escalation could mean for their futures. In today's hyper-connected world, the crisis is playing out not just in government halls, but across social media feeds and news alerts. Politicians issue ultimatums in 280 characters. Military threats are made without the usual checks and balances, and attacks on civilian infrastructure threaten to upend the lives of ordinary people. The rules of engagement are changing before our eyes. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will set powerful precedents for how the world handles conflict in the 21st century. Will we choose dialogue over force? Will international law hold? Or will new norms emerge from the chaos? These are questions that will shape not just this crisis, but the future of global relations. This is a crisis that belongs to all of us, no matter our nationality, background, or beliefs. Its outcome will shape the world we share, the values we uphold, and the future we leave for the next generation. Tonight, we all have a stake in what happens next. This standoff, tense and unyielding, is the culmination of a series of events that have unfolded with alarming speed and intensity. What began as a simmering dispute has now erupted into a full-blown crisis, with both sides unwilling to back down. The world watches anxiously, as the situation teeters on the edge of catastrophe. The current confrontation is the result of a rapid escalation, with military forces on both sides mobilizing at an unprecedented pace. Troop movements, armored convoys, and urgent deployments have transformed the region into a powder keg, ready to ignite at the slightest provocation. This chain reaction began just last month, when a series of unexpected developments set the stage for the crisis we see today. Headlines around the world tracked the escalation, as each day brought new threats and countermeasures, pushing the region closer to the brink. In early February, there was a glimmer of hope. U.S. and Iranian officials met in Geneva, sitting across the table in a last-ditch effort to revive the nuclear deal that had once promised stability. The world held its breath as diplomats exchanged cautious handshakes, hoping for a breakthrough that could avert disaster. But on February 28th, everything changed. Diplomacy collapsed in dramatic fashion as the US and Israel launched a massive aerial campaign. Nearly 900 airstrikes targeted key sites across Iran. The world was stunned by the news that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had been killed in the attacks, sending shockwaves through the region and beyond. In the aftermath, Iran moved swiftly. Mojtaba Khamenei, the Supreme Leader's son, assumed power in an emergency transition. Almost immediately, Iran retaliated by closing the vital Strait of Hormuz, effectively holding a fifth of the world's oil supply hostage and sending a clear message to the international community. The global response was immediate and chaotic. Markets around the world plunged into turmoil as oil prices soared and investors panicked. Burning oil fields and street protests became the new reality in major cities, while governments scrambled to respond to the rapidly deteriorating situation. Now, as the war enters its fourth week, the violence has only intensified. Missile strikes light up the night sky. Cross-border artillery fire echoes across the desert, and entire neighborhoods lie in ruins. Military vehicles rumble through the landscape, signaling that the conflict shows no signs of slowing down. Just 2 days ago, the violence reached a new peak when Iranian missiles struck southern Israel. Over 100 people were injured in the attack, as emergency responders raced to pull survivors from the rubble and ambulances rushed through devastated streets. The conflict is no longer contained within the region. Its shockwaves are now pulling more nations into the vortex, as world leaders hold emergency meetings and international forces mobilize. The world stands at a crossroads, uncertain of what the next chapter will bring. In less than a month, over 5,300 lives have been lost, many of them civilians. The scale of devastation is staggering, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble and families torn apart by sudden violence. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and communities are struggling to cope with the trauma and loss. For many, the pain is not just physical, but emotional, grieving loved ones and facing an uncertain future. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil shipments, has sent shockwaves through the world economy. In the United States, gas prices have soared by $1 in just a few weeks, putting immense pressure on household budgets. Everyday Americans are feeling the pinch at the pump, with many forced to cut back on travel or rethink their daily routines just to make ends meet. Brent crude has surged past $105 a barrel, and analysts warn it could go much higher if the crisis escalates. The energy sector is on edge, with traders bracing for further volatility. Industries that rely on affordable fuel, like transportation, manufacturing, and agriculture, are already feeling the strain, and the ripple effects are being felt in markets around the globe. Former President Clinton has issued a stark warning. Further U.S. attacks could push oil prices above $150 a barrel, risking a global recession. Economists are sounding alarms about the potential for widespread job losses, plummeting stock markets, and a sharp decline in consumer confidence. The world is watching nervously, aware that the economic fallout could be as devastating as the conflict itself. The human and economic costs are mounting. Each day without a diplomatic solution brings more tragedy and hardship. Families in conflict zones face shortages of food, water, and medicine, while those far from the front lines struggle with rising prices and economic uncertainty. Aid organizations are stretched thin, trying to provide relief amid chaos. Rising casualties and spiking prices are two sides of the same coin. The violence on the ground is mirrored by turmoil in the markets, and both are taking a heavy toll on ordinary people. The longer the crisis drags on, the deeper the wounds, both seen and unseen. This is the high price of confrontation, and a grim preview of what could come if peace remains out of reach. The world stands at a crossroads, hoping for a resolution before the costs become unbearable for all. On March 21st, the American president issued an ultimatum to Iran via social media. The message: reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, or face the destruction of Iran's power plants. This public digital threat bypassed traditional diplomacy and shocked allies and adversaries alike. The ultimatum targets civilian infrastructure, raising serious questions under international law. The president's move came just a day after suggesting the war was winding down, adding confusion and tension. Now, the world waits to see if this digital deadline will force a resolution, or ignite a wider war. Everything hinges on a single social media post. This war has unfolded without any formal authorization from Congress. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, but the president has acted alone, from airstrikes to ultimatums. Congressional attempts to rein in the president have failed, exposing deep political divisions. The threat to destroy power plants could violate international law, as civilian infrastructure is protected under the Geneva Conventions. This crisis is testing America's democratic institutions and the limits of presidential power. The spectacle of unilateral war raises urgent questions about accountability and the rule of law. Who decides when America goes to war and what limits remain? The president's ultimatum stunned America's allies, who learned of it on social media like everyone else. Nations dependent on Gulf oil, Japan, South Korea, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, were left scrambling, excluded from the decision-making process. This go-it-alone approach has eroded trust and left allies questioning their role. Iran responded with its own threats. If attacked, it will target U.S. and allied energy infrastructure across the Gulf. Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE now face direct threats to their economies and water supplies. The diplomatic landscape is fractured, confusion and mistrust reign. America's isolation makes a peaceful resolution harder to achieve. The world is more vulnerable than ever. As the 48-hour deadline expires, three scenarios emerge. First, Iran partially reopens the strait, allowing both sides to claim victory, a temporary fix, not a solution. Second, Iran refuses and the US strikes power plants, triggering humanitarian disaster and likely regional war, with oil prices soaring and economies reeling. Third, the US backs down, damaging its credibility and weakening alliances. Each path is fraught with peril, delay, escalation, or diminished power. The choice made now will shape international relations and global stability for years. The world is watching to see which door opens. The stakes could not be higher. What happens next will define the era. This crisis, born of failed diplomacy and digital brinkmanship, has brought the world to a crossroads. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz affects fuel prices, goods, and the global economy, reminding us how interconnected we are. War without congressional approval and threats to civilian infrastructure test the foundations of law and democracy. Sidelining allies has frayed the partnerships that keep the world stable. The outcome could be a fragile truce or a catastrophic regional war. The decisions made now will echo for generations. Peace, law, and strong alliances are the guardrails that keep chaos at bay.